Hello and welcome back, everybody. Thanks for being here again today. We really appreciate all of you taking time out of your busy schedules to come and join us. Those of you that are doing it live right now can see us on Facebook, and you have the opportunity to jump in there on the chat and ask any questions that you might have, either to myself or Sandy or our guests. Speaking of Sandy, there he is right there. How's it going, Sandy?
Hey, Rob. Awesome. Happy to be back again for another great one, and excited to get into it. Got a great interview lined up. Obviously, if you're watching, you can see our guest here standing by, and we will get to her in just a moment. And before that, I guess we want to always recommend everyone to go over to our website, breakthroughreapodcast.ca, grab our free gift there. They can subscribe to our email list so you never miss out on a show or anything else we got going on, property tours, webinars, whatever we're doing. You won't miss a beat if you get onto that, and you'll get a copy of our free report, The Ultimate Strategy for Building Wealth in Real Estate.
Absolutely. And there's a bunch of links there, and you can reach out to the guests through the website, and you can hop onto our social media, all that stuff over there on the website, breakthroughreapodcast.ca. And of course, everyone, please leave us a rating and review on iTunes. That super duper helps us, and we're doing so well, and we appreciate everything that everyone's done so far. So even if you maybe have like some suggestions for the show, we appreciate that too. If you have suggestions for topics you want to hear, then just go over there, hit us up, leave us a rating and review, and we'll be sure to try and hit on everybody's interests and what they want to hear about.
Absolutely. That's a lot of housekeeping. Anything else?
Well, what do you got coming up? You got any live stuff coming up?
Good question. We're gonna do something. Actually, get a couple webinars coming up. If they look me up online somewhere, I'm sure they can find it. We're doing something on. Probably if you're listening on audio, you might have missed it already. We're doing some stuff in December that are around investing in different locations, different cities. We're gonna do a bit of a kind of Southern Ontario sort of kind of going over some different markets: Hamilton, Kitchener, Waterloo, London, probably Barrie, maybe out your way, Rob. I don't know. We're going to do a few different areas and kind of hone in on what's happening in these different markets. So I think people can look forward to that. I think they should subscribe for our email list and probably connect with us in all the ways that we mentioned already so that they don't miss out on those things.
That's right. Maybe we should hire a hype person to come on here and talk about our stuff.
I know. Anything else coming up for you?
We just got the property tour once a month. They're still virtual right now, but you can see the kind of places that we're looking at, why we're looking at them, the pros and cons of the different types of either student rental or duplexing, or basement suites, that kind of thing. And yeah, like Sandy said, it's just go onto our email list and you'll see when, and you can join in and not miss anything. So yeah, absolutely. I don't have dates either, so I can't criticize you.
Well, I know you do a lot of the property tours virtual or otherwise, so people should definitely jump on those because I know you do a lot of them and they're pretty good value for people that want to get their feet wet and kind of learn how hands-on how you're doing your thing in the different markets you're navigating through: Peterborough, Oshawa, all of the east end of Toronto, right?
Yeah, it's once a month we're doing them, and let me tell you, there is tremendous opportunity, the kind of opportunity you don't really see anywhere else, especially in that Peterborough market, I think, anyways. And if someone wants to maybe get in touch with me and I can tell them why, please feel free. Email's on the screen. Of course, we go over how to reach us at the end of the show as well. So I think that's it, man. I think we've done our housekeeping for today quite well.
All right. Yeah, pretty efficient. Let's move on then. Let's get into our interview here in a second. Before we get to that, one quick note from our sponsor.
Hey guys, Omar Khan here with Theta Trading Co. I wanted to tell you about episode 124 of the Breakthrough Podcast. We currently have a special offer for Breakthrough Podcast listeners. We're offering a free 1-hour live training session where we show how to instantly add stock options as a new income stream. Now, I've used this myself personally over the years to create a sizable real estate portfolio for myself, and there's no reason you can't as well. The cool thing is it only takes about 30 minutes a day, so if you have a job, or if you have a business, or you're just spending a lot of time with your family, you're gonna have time to incorporate this in your life if you take the time to learn this, okay? Now, we're also offering a 15-minute free consultation to discuss how our option strategy can work with your current investment strategy and really take your investing to the next level, okay? So for more information, check out 30minutestocktrader.com/breakthrough to join us on our free live training, our next webinar. Remember again, episode 124, where Sandy and I go over exactly how I use this strategy to acquire a large real estate portfolio for myself, and there's no reason why you can't as well. See you there, guys. Talk soon.
All right, thanks for that. And we will bring in our guest here. So our guest today, Sarah Larbi. Sarah specializes in helping take the mystery out of home ownership for Canadians who thought real estate investing was going to be out of reach. She's earned their trust and respect by having the drive and focus to build and grow 7-figure, 10-plus property investor portfolio by her mid-30s, all while being fully employed, working full-time, and she's been able to now exit her job as of this year, after just 7 years after buying her first property. So I guess pretty exciting. There is, I guess, kind of claim to fame is retiring in your early 30s and getting out of the rat race, which is awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's given us the opportunity to have this interview with you, because I know we've tried to schedule it for quite some time and just weren't able to because you were balancing all that other stuff.
Yeah, because you do them on Wednesdays, and I'm like, well, I work a 9 to 5, and then we reconnected. I'm like, well, as of October 1st, I'm done. So let's schedule it in.
Absolutely. And I remember meeting you at the Canadian Real Estate Wealth Investor Forum. Probably it might have even been like 7 years ago.
It was a long time ago. Yeah.
Yeah. So you've come so far since then. So let's get into this.
Sounds good.
I guess let's just, for those of you, for those out there who haven't been listening to your podcast, which I'm sure we'll touch on in a little bit, let's talk about how you got started in real estate investing.
Yeah, absolutely. So, it was back in 2011-ish that I went to the bank with Matt, my spouse. We've been together 14 years now. And the financial advisor at the bank was asking us about our liabilities and our assets. And she was doing like just this review of our financials with us. And it was a good wake-up call because I didn't even know what an asset or a liability was. And we literally had no assets and a bunch of liabilities, and we had been working for a while. And, not that we were doing horrible in terms of our income, but we had nothing to show for it. So went home, and literally how it got started is me Googling and spending my Saturdays Googling how people become wealthy, how to build assets, how to retire early. And then I just became super focused in it. And then real estate kept coming back over and over as a solution that so many people have done successfully. And I'm like, okay, well, let's try it. And I've always been an action taker, which has helped, to some extent. And in 2013, it took a couple of years to convince my boyfriend to do it. He was worried about the tenants and, not paying and trashing the place. So we kind of got over that a little bit. And then 2013, we literally bought the cheapest thing that we can afford and, cashed out some of my, vacation commission or money to be able to put towards the down payment. And then we kind of just snowballed from there.
And built that up to a pretty good portfolio now, enough to retire. So we've obviously done it the right way. And I'm sure we can get a little deeper in that story because a lot of people have that dream or hope or desire in life, and not a lot of people actually. I mean, retire as a
quote unquote. It's not like I'm going to do nothing for the rest of my life, but now I can focus on the stuff that I enjoy doing. Keep scaling to that next level and create new goals where I'm not tied for 40, 50, 60 hours making somebody else rich.
Yeah, exactly. So what strategy do you use in your real estate business? Have you used the same one since the start, or how's that changed, or what strategies have you used? And tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, originally we just started with buy and hold because I didn't know a whole lot. And I thought it was like, you're either a landlord or you're a flipper. And there's so many more real estate strategies, but you see the stuff on TV or you hear on the news, the landlord stuff. And I'm like, well, I can't do anything when it comes to renovations. And this is how much I didn't know. So we're going to just go ahead and buy, something that's fairly turnkey and just do some very, very minor upkeep to it. And our first tenant was my sister-in-law because, again, we wanted to, do this. We thought the most easy way, but I'll tell you, don't rent to family. It just, unfortunately backfires. But, so we started with buy and hold, and then we realized that it was not helping us get there as fast. So over time, what we did is just switched over to the BREI strategy, where you're actually renovating, not me, but we hire it out, or we're contracting it out. And then, the BREI strategy really allowed us to be able to refinance that capital that we've created, that equity that we've created, and then redeploy it into the next deal. And, over time, what I think has helped me increase the cash flow and the ability for me to say I don't need to still have a full-time job was we didn't have any joint ventures. So everything that we're bringing in is 100% ours. And then we've switched some of the tenants over. So I specifically screen tenants so that they don't have a need for a forever home, and they have a goal to move out at some point within 2 to 3 or 4 years, so that you can bump up the rents, and that's helped a lot. And then switching some of the properties over to short-term or medium-term rentals and having those furnished to boost the cash flow even more. So I think a combination of the burst strategy and then converting some of the units to shorter term, and also switching the tenants from, a lower paying tenant. Once you get, the market rents back up, your cash flow, it helps that much more as well.
Was your plan always was the plan to retire or get out of the rat race sort of thing? Was that always the goal? Was that from day one? That's part of the mission and kind of the plan that you had set forth and how to get there? Was that a big, well thought out plan, or was that just kind of just played out?
I always wanted the freedom. I did not believe in working for 40 years and retiring on 40% of what you used to make. That just is the big, they say that's the biggest scam, and it really is. And I wanted my time back. So, to give somebody 40, 50, 60 hours a week, and I will tell you, I left the last job I had. It was amazing, but it was still a job, and it was still not working for me. And I'm, just making the salary as an example. So it was always the plan to be able to live with more freedom, and to be able to do more, and to be able to take control back of my time. So that's always been the plan. Ironically, it was during COVID that I paused and looked at everything and realized I could do it. And I was sitting on my dock. I remember this back in, I want to say April, May, when everything was first starting. And then I was looking at my financials, and I was looking at, the next steps. And I was burnt out. Before COVID, I was working some insane hours. And then in addition to the podcasts, and in addition to the BREI Club and everything else, it was a good time for me to be I'm in a spot right now where I don't need to keep doing this. I'm doing real estate to be able to take that freedom. And so I made the decision. And what happened is I called my mortgage broker, because you don't want to make that too quickly. And we've refinanced what we could, because it's a lot easier when you still have a T4 income to be able to do that refi and just get everything positioned. And so that was a 3 to 4 month process, because the refis, everyone was doing them at the beginning of COVID, and it was just a lot longer, and I had to fight over a couple of them. And then I told my work boss and gave them, it's always for me, they've always had my back. So it was important for me to leave on the best terms. So I gave them, I think I told my boss originally in June or July. And I basically gave them that time until October 1st to leave. So,
and were you in the type of job too that had really strict time constraints, or were you I know some people say they worked pretty steady, but maybe you're a sales type role where you're out and about and being able to be out in the field a lot. What type of, there must have been some hurdles there in work, obviously putting a lot of time in beyond just your day job in terms of, investing, finding houses, all that stuff. How were you able to do all that?
Yeah. It was always important for me not to do anything that's not work related or my job between that 8 to 5 timeline. It just didn't feel right. But just to give you a little bit of background, I've been in sales my whole life. I was a sales manager, and I was managing a team in Ontario, and I was overseeing Montreal, and I was overseeing Vancouver when I left. But prior to that, I did a lot more traveling, back and forth, Montreal, BC, et cetera, et cetera. So there was a lot of traveling involved. And I think over time, how I've been able to do it was just figure out the process and build the team and just become like a master delegator. Like I will delegate everything, even from my grocery shopping and cooking. So like removing all of the chores, all of the things that like can take up time so that you can focus on your job. And plus like just the big stuff that will help you get to that next level is really what I try to focus on, rather than the small things. And the small things, I would just figure out who can do them and who can do them efficiently enough so that I can free up my time.
Can we go back really quickly and just cover, so I think that BFRR or burst strategy or whatever you want to call it has been very, very powerful for a lot of people that listen to this show, especially I think the people that are starting out are, typical people with 9-to-5 jobs and not a lot of extra money. So understanding that I think is pretty important. So do you want to just go through like how that's worked for you and what it is, I guess, first of all?
Yeah, essentially the burst strategy: buy, renovate, rent, refinance, repeat. So I've done it both ways. I mean, I think first and foremost, like, and you guys are realtors yourself, but it is really important that you work with a realtor that understands investing and understands the strategy that you want to do, and that is local as well. That was huge because they were able to, as we got, into property 4 and 5 and 6, go in and view properties for us. And if they were good enough, we would make an offer, and then it would be conditional on like home inspection or something. And then we would go see it. If we don't like it, then whatever, it cost us $400 or whatnot. And we've been able to get some really good deals, like some, potential deals that we wouldn't have got otherwise if we didn't act quickly. So building that team was super important. And then in terms of the renovation piece, I mean, I think it's a blessing in disguise that I literally cannot do any renos because I want to work on the business and not in the business. But, originally we were actually lucky. Matt's dad is really handy, and he was always getting laid off work. So we were actually able to hire him and pay him just like an hourly wage, and he was able to help us. And as things got more complex and the renovations got more complex, and we hired, more people, we used to and I say we, Matt is helpful, but he's not like as into real estate as I am. But he's been there along the way. I mean, we've been together for a while. But, it's gone from a lot of self-managing the trades and figuring out, okay, we need a floor guy, we need a kitchen guy, and then just piecing it all together to the point where, you have some really good contractors that you trust, that do a good job. I mean, this last project I just did in Burlington, I was living at the cottage. It was during COVID. I was living at the cottage for 3 months. I maybe saw that property 3 times because I trusted them. They did a great job. Yes, it's a little bit more expensive, but it's a lot more hands-off. And then, the other piece of that, I will say one of the things that helped me a lot was creating a tenant screening process and ensuring that the right tenants come into the properties. Because especially if you're listening to this and you're in an area like in Ontario or something that is very geared towards tenants, that is your only control that you have. So don't skip over that part. I've created like this whole 5-step like screening out process. And it's worked so far. I mean, we've always we've made a couple mistakes early on where we decided to give chances to a couple people that were like kind of red flags, didn't really work out. It wasn't a disaster, but I don't think we would do that again. But over time, you're going to firm up that process. And then in terms of the refinance piece, I'll tell you that not every single BRRRR that you're going to do is going to be a slam dunk home run where you're going to get all your money back from your reno and your holding and your down payments. You might have half of your down payment still left in it, right? I'm still okay with that. So like one of the things that has helped a lot was just keeping a pulse on the market and work with your realtor to see, what the comparables are every 3 to 6 months. And if it makes sense to pull the rest out 6 months, 12 months later after you've done your first refi, you could always refi a second time. And just keeping a good pulse on that market over time has helped as well, so that you can unlock the equity. Just make sure that you still cash flow, of course. And then essentially, just keep your goal in mind, keep your plan in mind, and for me, it's not about acquiring like 1,000 properties. It's just about like creating that freedom that I want.
So there is absolutely a lot going on there, and a lot for people to learn. I don't think we can touch on everything to the deepest level where we need to in the hour that we have with you today, but there's been something that you've mentioned twice already, and that's tenant screening. And you did mention the first time how and I thought this was really interesting, how you sort of set them up to be the ones that aren't going to stay there forever. And I think that that's really insightful. Can you share with us why and how you would do that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I will give Ontario as an example. Again, every province is going to be different. And if you're listening to this from the US, it's going to be different there too. But in Ontario, anything that was a current unit before 2018, before November 2018, is subject to rent control. Anything after that, that was not a living space before, is not. So a lot of the houses I'm buying are like 80 or 100 years old. So they are going to be rent controlled, which means that the government essentially dictates how much every year you can increase your rents by. And it's like peanuts. It's like 1%, 1.5%, 2%. Next year is going to be absolutely nothing. You can thank the government for that. But, that's 20 bucks a year, 30 bucks a year. It's not much. So it is important to find tenants that are going to be moving or have a goal to buy a house, or, may not stay there forever, because if you can only raise your rents by that 1% to 2% a year, but your market rents, because of immigration and because of the lack of housing, and we have such low vacancies, the market rents over a year could go up 5%. It can be up to 10%. They could even be up more in some markets. So at some point, your market rents are going to be going up a lot more, and then you're just really creeping up in terms of what you can raise. So once they get out, I mean, most tenants have left. I have one left. As soon as she's gone, I'm getting another, I can raise it another $500. And that really helps, because when she's in there, I mean, they're great tenants. We love them. But, when she's in there, I can't really say, I'm going to raise your rent back to market rent. It's not technically illegal. But as soon as she's out, which, hopefully it's soon, then you can raise your rents again to what market rent is, which is quite, like in Ontario, it's gone up quite drastically just because of the shortage and the low vacancy. And then it's not happening. It's not going to change anytime soon. I mean, we're looking at the immigration numbers. I mean, that's 400,000 Canadian immigrants. I think that they're planning for next year, 250,000 of those will likely come in the GTA-ish area within an hour or two radius. So it's not going to be any slower. If anything, I think, in my opinion, market rents are going to pick up.
Yeah, I agree. There's tons of Southern Ontario, especially different in depending where you are, and maybe even different in like downtown Toronto, given some of the weirdness going on. But that's probably short term. And yeah, some great opportunities still there. Do you do a lot of is there a lot of your deals on your own? Do you do joint venture deals? A lot of people do the BREI strategy and they pair that with raising money with joint ventures. Do you do that as well, or has that been a part of your process or plan?
Part of what I wanted to do for me personally, and not that there's anything wrong with doing it one way or the other, I am going to do joint ventures now. But it was important for me to build my nest egg properties. It was important for me to build something that I had full control over, and I didn't have to share any profits. I didn't have to share any cash flow. And I'll tell you that, if you can do it by yourself, do it by yourself. If you won't, or you can't for whatever reason, you can JV. But for me, it was just important to have that built first. And, to be able to have full control. Now, I'm going to be joint venturing moving forward. That's fine. But, if you can, my advice to people, guys, is if you can do it by yourself and you will do it by yourself, maybe just hire a coach. It actually might cost a lot less in comparison, in my opinion.
Well, 50% of however many properties, or, maybe you can do less than 50, but kind of standard or normal kind of split there, 50-50. That's a lot of money over the years, right? As it builds up and the appreciation adds on, and it's a lot to give up in a deal. If you can do it on your own, I agree 100%.
And then you have people too that will scale to 100, right? And usually they'll have joint ventures. So you can just kind of look and see what your goals are, what your portfolio is like. In a way, if you don't have JVs, sometimes it's just simpler, right? You don't have to run anything by anyone. You want to refi, you go refi. You want to use the cash flow to do whatever you want, you can do that too. So, I'm big on control. However, I will say, if you are not going to pull the trigger, if you need the financing or you need the money, find somebody that might have what you don't have and go that route. So I'm not saying don't do a joint venture. But what I'm saying is if you can do it by yourself first, that's, in my opinion, that's just always the first best option.
Yeah, I'd agree. Get in the game as well. Take action and get in the game. If you need to joint venture or bring in some form of partnership, then do it. But I agree. 100% of a deal is, at the end of the day, if you can get that to be a part of your plan, that makes a lot more sense. It's a lot easier to manage long term. There's one less partnership there to really consider, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do you evaluate real estate deals generally? Like, what are you looking for in a deal when you're looking, or you're having a realtor go out and look for you on your behalf, or what does that process look like? And where do you find your deals? Because I know you've bought a good amount of properties over the years. Are they off market, on market, wholesalers? Where are they coming from?
Yeah, so far they've actually been on market, but within usually a couple hours of hitting market. I mean, you can find some stuff off market too, but I will say some off market stuff, like you still have to do your due diligence, because even though you've got a wholesaler bring you a deal, it doesn't always mean that it's, face value. Like there's sometimes they up what the actual ARV might be. So there's always your due diligence that you've got to do, but they've all been on market. A lot of them have been estate sales. A lot of them have just been like really ugly dated properties. And then just in terms of how I evaluate, I do have a calculator that I put together for my BREIs. But essentially, I want to be able to pay back after repair value, all of my reno and holding costs, and half to 3/4 minimum of my down payment. So that's where I'm looking at it. Like, yes, I've done some where I've pulled out everything and then made profits, but like realistically, those aren't everywhere. And and if you're looking for that home run deal, well, it's going to be far and few between. So try to hit first base, second base, third base with some of those. And you can always refinance a second time, pull the rest out after another 12 months if the prices have risen and allows you to do so.
So we got someone asking about the refinance process there. When you do the refinance portion in the BREI strategy, are you doing that through a conventional lender? Has that changed at all, or is it private lending? Are you getting through a corp? What's that look like typically?
I've done mostly just through regular bank lending, because one of the reasons I've kept my job and I've kept it for so long as well was just because it was easy to qualify. But most of them actually have been with A lenders. One has been private, and I'll tell you, even though you or I may be qualified for that next property, if the property is in really bad shape or is missing a kitchen or it's like not livable, regardless if you qualify or not, you're going private because no institutional lender is going to touch a house that's not livable. So it is important to have a private lender nearby. And I'll tell you, money is easy to find. That's not the piece that you need to be so worried about. I mean, especially right now, a lot of people are looking to loan out their money. But most of it has been, because it's been just dated and ugly, I've been able to get, to get regular bank lending with that. And then the other thing I would want to add, though, is if you are doing the BRRRR strategy, make sure that your mortgage broker, hopefully you don't go to the bank for many reasons, but try to work with your mortgage broker and let your mortgage broker know what you want to do in the timeline, because there are going to be some lenders, if you do get financing with certain banks, as an example, that don't like to refinance within that 12-month mark. And some other ones might be okay with a 3-month refinance. So it is going to be important that you talk through the plan in the deal, because if you're with the wrong lender, that could be more expensive for nothing, and you may have to wait that extra time before you refinance and take your money out. So work through that, go variable. Obviously, you don't want to fix rate, because that's going to be a lot of money to break in terms of fees. And if you do plan on refinancing, variable rates are always easier.
And work through like a plan of not just this property. What is the next? Maybe if your plan is to retire in 5 years, 3 years, whatever that is, work through that plan, because how they fund the first deal and what lender they end up going through, all that sort of thing. Maybe that affects the next one.
That makes a huge difference. Right? Huge difference, because some lenders will lend up to 5. Some lenders won't not care. Like, you have to know which lenders will look at what. And like, some lenders, they care more about your income and your debt ratios. Some other lenders, like CIBC as an example, like they want to see like cash in your checking. But like, as an investor, you're not really going to have cash in your checking. So like, maybe you'll take it from a HELOC, put it in your checking, snapshot, put it back. I didn't say this, guys. Yeah. But at the end of the day, this is why I say don't go to the bank directly, because every lender will have different criterias, and they're going to also look at your whole portfolio. And some will say, nope, sorry, you're too big for us. And you might have missed the best spots with them if you had started with them first. So this is why like a mortgage broker will have a pulse on that whole thing.
Yeah, and what I was going to say there was that, the question was, are you refinancing through traditional ways? But I think a lot of times people misunderstand that. And I think that the most important thing to consider is that any kind of leverage is better than no leverage. If you bought something with cash and you can go to a private lender, you're still going to do better than having all cash into the deal.
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah. So and that might be sort of more what he's asking, I think, for some reason.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Yep. You're right. So run the numbers, right? I mean, private first mortgages right now are maybe not as expensive as they used to be 2 years ago. And you've got to run your cash flow numbers. And you also have to look at your exit strategy as well, for sure.
No, absolutely. Great answer, though. That, like, I mean, all of this stuff is stuff that people need to consider for sure. What was the next one here? So let's talk about all the things that you've got going on inside real estate investing that maybe aren't just to do with buying properties. You've got a podcast, you've got the Right Club Investor Club that you've started. I guess let's talk about the Right Club first.
Yeah, so we started the Right Club about 4 years ago. It's REITE, Real Estate Investing Training and Education. It's actually gone national now. We are virtual, and it's essentially a place where you can get webinars, education, podcasts, forums, lots of connections to other investors. And we used to do live events in Burlington prior to COVID, and we get 300 to 350 attendees each time. But we've pivoted and gone online, and now it's actually coast to coast. So it's right. So currently we're doing 2 webinars a month. We are going to be moving to every single week just because we're going to be doing different regions as well. And that's gone well. I mean, it's important for us to be able to share Canadian real estate content because there's a lot of American stuff. It's quite different, as you know. But we want to bring the information to people, and I mean, it's free, so you might as well tune into it. Essentially, the Right Club also has a podcast as well. If you guys listen to podcasts, which you probably do if you're listening to this.
Where can our listeners or viewers find the information on the Right Club or the podcast?
Yeah, the Right Club is therightclub.com. Or we're on Instagram, Right Club. And then the podcast, we're on like Stitcher and Apple Podcasts and all that stuff. So that's, you can find the Right Club there. And then my other podcast is called Where Should I Invest, which you can find on Apple. You can probably Google my name, or you can Google the title either. And it's on Stitcher and a few other things like that.
So we like to try and stay real, and we like to provide Canadians, like you were saying, with a lot of useful information, right, that they can actually take and use and apply. So let's talk about some challenges that you've had, some real challenges that, aren't just like, I feel like mindset is a big thing that people say that, they've had to overcome a certain mindset. But if we wanted to talk about sort of nuts and bolts challenges that you've had, what would one of them be?
Yeah, I mean, I think originally was just not having the right team, not having the right team of realtors. Like, we were working with a great guy, but he was from Oakville back in the day. And, had we built the proper team, I think we would have scaled faster. Going to the bank directly, that was a mistake too. In the beginning, we had 3 with a big bank, and then we had to untangle the mess because it wasn't the right bank to start with. And then, I'll tell you, mindset is obviously important, but like, shit happens. And I don't know if I can say that on here, but it happens. Like last week, like literally I had, so with that big windstorm, tree branch knocked over all the power lines, and then our like box that was on the power hydro box ripped off the siding as well on our house. So we have like a bunch of siding missing, and then that box hit the neighbor's car. So my tenant called me and she's like, I've had better days. But and that was a $3,000 fix. So things like that will happen. This is why, including maintenance and CapEx and all of those things into your cash flow calculations is going to be really important. Yeah, it sucks, but it is what it is. I mean, we had a $20,000 mistake a few houses back where the seller actually had boarded up the entire attic, so we couldn't go and actually inspect it. And when our tenants complained, they ended up moving out, because we had to essentially take the ceiling down. They didn't want to be there for that. There's black mold, vermiculite, asbestos. Anyways, they, $20,000 fix. So there will be things like that. I think, what you see on Instagram and what you see on social media. I mean, it's great. Yes, it's awesome real estate, but like there's still going to be the ups and downs, and there's going to be a lot of little problems that I think, it'll either make or break you. Having, family rent, and I have to be careful how I say this, but we had to BREI the house a second time based on what it was left at the end. So again, you just have to look at what you're mixing, and when it comes to renting to friends and family, I just would just suggest that you just don't do it. We're okay. We're okay now, but there's many times that I'm like, how are you moved out and your stuff is still in our house for 23 days? Like this would never ever happen if it was another tenant, and we would not allow this. So just little things like that. And then I will say, like, especially if you're doing renos, like there is going to be something like issues with the city and getting permits and the delay. Like there's always going to be crap. And you just have to keep going with it and just keep, looking ahead, and but just know it happens.
I think the big takeaway there is that, yeah, like those are challenges. When you look at it long term, the renovations, the tenants and toilet stuff doesn't even compare to your first point, which was building the right team and structuring things properly to go forward. Is far more important than these. They are going to be hurdles, but I think that that's more how a lot of people tend to look back on them. These renovation issues and tenant issues are more just a hurdle that they've had to get over, where the other ones are very significantly more important when you look long term to build what you're trying to build, right?
Absolutely.
So thank you. Good points.
What do you do to help? You have some programs, Sarah, to help investors and help them get going or get things going better. How do you help them out, and what are some of those programs like?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, right, I have my screening process. Essentially, I put into video and all of my documents that's available on my website. So it's like all my screening out measures and how I screen my tenants and find them, and it is a process. So that's available. I am doing, starting January, I'm actually going to do this over 12 months. I find that if you just take a class for one day, it goes in your head and then it goes out, right? And then life happens. So I'm actually doing a whole 12-month program. It's actually going to be called the BREI Freedom Community, and it's going to be affordable. It's going to be a bigger group, but we're going to go through each step in a lot of detail. I'm going to provide some of the documents I have. It's going to be 2 calls that are live every single month. One is going to be on a Tuesday evening, and one is a Thursday evening, second Tuesday, third or fourth Thursday. Anyways, it's on the website. And that's starting in January. And then it's going to be also an intro to some of my team members. So one of the calls is going to be talking to contractors and some Q&A. And then the other call is going to be like the content, right? What to look for when you're renovating, how to spot deals, how to make offers. So we're going to go through all of that stuff over 12 whole months.
And that's on sarahlarbi.com. Is that where they go to find out that info?
Yeah, like I think it might be up starting next week. The screening stuff is up right now, and then the community, I think I'm going to start launching it next week or like in the next 10 days or so.
Awesome. That's exciting. That'll be a cool venture. So looking forward to seeing more of that. It's helping people do the BREI strategy, which a lot of people want to do. It's really intriguing, and it's quite a decent amount of work once you get into it, and renovation part especially. You don't necessarily need to be there all the time, but you need to kind of have an understanding of what's going on, right, to make some decisions.
Yeah, well worth it. I mean, during the renos, like it can get stressful, but I look back and I'm like, the sacrifices I made for the last 7 years is well worth it, because now I don't have to work a job anymore.
Are you going to continue doing what's it look like now going forward for you? Are you going to continue doing the BREI strategy? Or are you adding in, I don't know, do you add in flips, or do you add in, like, after now you're kind of retired, quote unquote, has the strategy changed? Are you still going to do the same sort of structure to your deals, or what's that look like?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm still doing the burst strategy. I am looking at joint venturing as well. Again, because I don't have a T4 income, and I can, help somebody learn along the way and get into the market. I've opened that option, and I am going to start looking at multifamily because I can still self-finance the multifamily. So I'm doing that. I'd love to find another cottage. They're impossible to find. But I still want to scale. I don't necessarily need to do 50 deals a year. Ideally, I'd like to, enjoy Thursday to Sunday as my off days. Ideally, so again, the Right Club is still a passion of mine, and the podcast is still a passion of mine, and I do intend to scale. I also, it's a hard market right now, so you've got to be patient. And if I don't get something in the next couple months, then I'm sure I'll get something in 3 or 4 more months, and I'm just not going to be competing in 10 offer deals where it doesn't make sense anymore. So I'm always looking. I'm just not going to be stupid with what I buy.
Can I ask you, Sarah, since you've started, since you retired, how have you done with your time management? Has that been a struggle?
For the first 2 weeks, I was just as busy because every call I've moved for the first 2 weeks. But now what I've done is everything for the Right Club is like Mondays. My podcasts are Mondays, so I've time blocked everything. I started like fitting in the stuff that I want to do, like working out. So I'm going to work out twice today, that kind of stuff. And has it been a struggle? No, I don't think so. I mean, as long as you start first putting the stuff that's important. So my girls monthly brunch is important. Hanging out with my friends is important. So that gets scheduled first, and then everything else comes after. But I find that for me, I just don't want to do a podcast, on a Monday and a Friday and a Sunday. I'd rather, if I'm hosting them, just have them all in one day and then they're done. So something I've been working on with my calendar, and I schedule my workouts first and my outings first, and then the rest comes.
Yeah, perfect. I think that's a really good tip that people need to listen to too. If you because I mean, that's something I've struggled with. I'll be honest. It's very difficult for me, and I mean, I've got the kids and my wife and the rest of the family and everything else going on. And I tend to be when somebody reaches out because they need me, I'll try and be there. So I put all my other stuff on pause to go and look after this. And I've found that because I wasn't prepared, I guess, to have my own schedule and to sort of block out that time that was important, that it just didn't get done. So I really like that you've said that you block out all of those things that need to be done first, and then the rest of the stuff can fill in.
Yeah. And I will also say that delegating is so important. Literally, I delegate snow removal, gardening, cleaning, cooking. I've got some VAs for my podcast. I don't, edit my own podcasts. I've got somebody that helps me with the branding strategy stuff. So if you can figure out how to bring people on your team to do the stuff that you don't enjoy doing, or maybe the stuff that they could be more efficient at doing, then it just frees up more time. And I'll tell you, I've been doing this for a couple months. I think it also helps that we're also in COVID and in the pandemic right now. So there's not as many live things to go to. So ask me again, when things return back to normal, maybe, and then there's more events and more more networking things, and I'll probably be out a lot more doing those things. But yeah.
Well, I guess the reason that I brought it up was because you said ideally you'd like to have Thursday, I think, to Sunday, you said, as days. But if you do not schedule those as days off, it will not happen.
That's true.
You have to do it. If that's what your goal is, then that's what you have to schedule in. So
yeah,
I'm envious of your goal. One day I'll get there. So let's just talk about what would be your biggest tip for somebody just starting out?
I mean, I think just educating, podcasts, webinars, networking groups is going to be the first thing. And if you want to add a coach and a mentor, that would help you scale faster and do it better and make less mistakes. And I think just going out there and applying what you've learned. I mean, the fact that I have a podcast right now is literally because I went to that Tony Robbins event that they had like a couple years ago, and it was like that wealth, I don't know, I can't remember what it was called, but it was this big event, and I ended up buying this like podcasting thing for like $500, and I'm like, well, I spent it, I might as well start a podcast. That's how the podcast got started. But it goes back to taking action and implementing it, and then just always being able to have that going forward attitude, because like life gets in the way and other things get in the way and work will get in the way. So not letting that stuff get in the way of your ultimate goals. And I see that happening a lot, right? People get all gung ho. Maybe they read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and whatever else. And they're like, okay, I want to do this. And then there's always like a reason or an excuse, and, be resourceful. So, if you don't have money, if you don't have a job, like, there are other things you can do. Yeah, it's going to be harder, right? I'm not going to say it's going to be as easy as if you can, use some equity from your HELOC or your home, and you've got a steady job to get started, but there's always a way. And if you don't know, then, find somebody that can help you. And then the other thing I would just say, and I know you asked me for one thing, but the other thing I would say is, look at the 5 people that you hang out with the most. And if they are watching Netflix and, are going to be in the same position in 5 or 10 years from now, or not where you want to be, then add a couple people that have, more than you, that whether it's time, whether it's freedom, whether it's wealth, whether it's health, like whatever that is, because you are the average of the 5 people that you spend the most amount of time with, other than your family. So upgrade. I'm not saying to get rid of the ones that you like and you've been friends for a long time, but you might want to upgrade a couple.
Good advice. I was about to say, I was going to ask a question about, because you obviously stuck to a plan. I'm sure you had some sort of a plan to get yourself out of the rat race there in a fairly quick amount of time. And I think a lot of that comes down to avoiding. I was kind of laughing because I was going to say avoiding kind of shiny object syndrome, things like that. Avoiding like sticking to the plan, which I think you've done overall, from my perspective. And then you went on I bought the $500 thing at the event, and that was a bit of a maybe shiny object syndrome, but that's okay. That was probably part of your plan in some way.
And you know what? The podcast is actually the best thing I've ever done. Like if I had to like pick one thing that I'm like the most proud of, it's being able to help others and teach others Canadian real estate content. But I will tell you, if you start a podcast, and you guys would know this, there's a lot of opportunity that come your way. You're creating a brand, you're creating a name. If ever I need money, I've got money. If ever I need a JV, I've got it. There's tons of opportunity, but it just opens up a lot of doors. And I would say that, like, looking back, yeah, I figured I paid for it, and I'm going to go do it because I take that action, but it opened up way more doors than I would have ever imagined.
You know what? I feel like that's a common theme too for a lot of people, is that, people that don't understand coaching necessarily, like you can get the same information most likely from listening to podcasts. But if you commit yourself to a coach, you spend a bunch of money on a coach, right? You're in their program. Now you've got a responsibility to yourself and your family and that money you've spent to make it work, to make it, to have results from that. So when you bought the podcast kit, you're not just like, well, I'm just going to throw it in the closet. I don't know what I was thinking. You said, okay, well, no, I bought this. I'm going to use it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's great.
Thanks.
What else, Rob? What motivates you to keep going on all this stuff? What's the next like exciting thing in your world that you're working towards? I think retirement's a huge thing to hit. A lot of people retire and then they're like, I don't know what the heck I'm going to do now. What else is going on in your life that you're excited about?
I always wanted to be a snowbird and get out of here, at least for January and February. Once things get lifted again, that is the plan, is to not have, I despise the cold, and I just can't do winter. So the goal was always to be able to retire so I don't have to be here during the cold. Granted, obviously with the pandemic and stuff, there's, different issues, but once things open up again, I intend to enjoy my summer year round. That's big. And then just like being able to help our families too, we didn't necessarily grow up with like a ton of stuff, and like Matt's parents, we got to take them on a trip, a couple years ago, their first trip of their lives. Like that was really cool too. And so I think it's just about keeping those connections, because, money comes and goes and your relationships will stay, and you don't want to be so focused on building your wealth and building your portfolio that everything falls apart around you. And then when you're there, you have nobody to go to. You've got no friends left. You've got no family left. So I think part of what I want to do now is just be able to enjoy that freedom that I've created, and still scale, but not like do it to the extent that I'm going to be working 80 hours a week either. I think like a good 20 hours is good, 20 hours, give or take. And then I can figure out who I can delegate the rest to.
So I think a lot of people are going to want to reach out to you to find out how to work 20 hours a week and own a bunch of real estate. So that's maybe a good trigger to let people know how they can reach out to you best and get involved in any of these things that you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, they can go to my website, sarahlarbi.com, or I'm on Instagram, investor Sarah Larbi. I'm not really on Facebook that much. I still have to figure out how to use it, but I figured out Instagram for the most part. And otherwise, they can send me an email, which is sarah@sarahlarbi.com.
Very good. Thanks, Sarah. I really appreciate everything you've shared today.
Thanks very much for having me on, guys. It was so much fun.
Yeah. Happy to have you, and hopefully we can have you back again sometime.
Anytime. Just let me know.
We'll do the snowbird.
We can.
We'll do the snowbird story when they get there, or maybe before. But
what locations do you have your sights on for the winter?
I really want to do Costa Rica, I think, next.
Very cool. All right. Sandy, how can people get in touch with you?
Sandy at McKayRealtyNetwork.com might be the best, or 289-389-6846.
And anyone that wants to reach out can reach me at rob@mrbreakthrough.ca. Thanks, everybody, for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah.